Hey guys, what's up? So I am very much into seed starting right now. And today I woke up to a really awesome surprise. And so I wanted to talk to you about my peppers and how I basically start my peppers. It's the most complicated thing I do for any of the seeds that I grow. It's one of those things where I haven't had a lot of success with peppers in my handful of years gardening. And so I've been trying a bunch of different things just to see what would work. And I do something special with peppers, which there's a lot of videos on how to do this too online that I learned from, which are really great resources. But this morning, I woke up to something new. And so I wanted to share that with you because honestly, I wasn't really going to talk about my pepper process as far as like seed starting peppers at all, just because I felt like there was so much that I was still trying to figure out and learning, and it just wasn't working very well. It's never really worked super well for me. I've been able to, get maybe, I think the most I've ever gotten was 30 plants, which was a big deal because that was my second year gardening. I decided to start my peppers for the first time ever after I had bought some from a local nursery, and they said sweet peppers and they were all hot. So that was really disappointing for me because I couldn't eat any. My husband enjoyed them, like Andrew loved them, but I couldn't eat any and it was really sad for me. So I wanted to start them from seeds. And that very first year, I was able to get a good tray full, which was really awesome, but it was a lot of work. I was confused the whole time. They looked really bad. So anyway, I wanted to share what's kind of the progress of these in 24 hours, which is really wild. Just to kind of start this off, I do a process for my peppers where I germinate the seeds first. And basically what that looks like is I put them on a wet paper towel, and then every day I make sure they're kind of moist, and then spray them with water, that kind of deal. So typically I'll just use like to-go containers and stuff like that. These aren't actually my favorite. It's just what we had this year, from different takeout meals that we had. So I had a bunch of these laying around from like Indian food and stuff like that. So I'm using these, but I actually really love the really small like sauce ones that you get like salsa and stuff like that in. So those are actually my favorite, but I have a bunch of these. And then I have these containers that we had bought, and a bunch of them from, I think we were using from spices. I have a bunch of these, I use these too. And so those are the predominant ones that I've been using for the last couple years. And then this year, I decided to try again the just paper towel in a Ziploc bag thing. So the difference between these two methods, this one is probably what you're gonna see most often online in tutorials. And so basically what it is take a paper towel, put it on a plate or something. I like to wet it first, sprinkle the seeds on top, and then fold it over. And then what I do is I actually will put the packet in the Ziploc bag, and then I will spray it more once it's in the Ziploc bag. For me, that just made it easier to handle. But what it looks like is on the inside, you can see there, I have the paper towel and folded, and then there's a bunch of seedlings in there. And then this is the same method. I just modified it that first year I was gardening because I was trying this method and I really didn't like it. I wanted to be able to see the seedlings better because I was like ripping up the paper towels and all sorts of stuff. There were some that I missed, and so they grew into the paper towel, and it was really hard to kind of like take them out with tweezers without damaging the seedlings and the germinated seedlings. And so I switched from this to this. This year I wanted to try this again, mostly for space issues, but I've been doing this for the last couple years, like I said, and it's worked okay, like not great. I'll kind of come out every morning after a couple weeks and I'll have one or two germinated. I think the most I've had is maybe like 7 will germinate, and that's a really exciting day for me. But this method I do prefer it because what I do here is I just kind of cut up a paper towel, stick it in the bottom, sprinkle the seeds on, and then I just basically I can see what they look like. I can see which ones are germinated really easily. Sometimes without opening the lid even. I can also check the moisture level, all that kind of stuff. And it's just easier for me. I like to kind of put them in a tray to hold them all together and stuff like that. And then I will put all these on a heat mat. So that's my process. But I wanted to show you what happened in the last 24 hours. I'm going to see if I can do this so you can see it. But there are a ton of peppers that are germinated. They have like these little white tails. So there's a ton in there. And all of my seedlings, I woke up and they're all like that, which is really fun. I've never had this many germinate overnight before. And I checked these yesterday and I pulled out the ones that germinated yesterday and there weren't nearly as many. So let me see if you can see that. It looks kind of weird. But all those little tail looking things are sprouted. So one other thing that I did this year, because I started some of these mid-January and it's just been really slow and not working, and I did it from a lot of saved seeds from like peppers from the farmer's market and all that kind of stuff, and I was just getting really poor germination, basically no germination. And so I decided that I was going to start over. So on February 1st, the day before my birthday, I decided to try again with some of these. Some of these you can see, you know, these are saved seeds from the farmer's market on 2020. So these are a couple years old, and I decided to try again. So this is one that I just germinated a couple weeks ago. Today is the 12th, 13th, I believe. And this one just has a ton in there that are now germinated, which is really exciting because that means that these took just a couple weeks. Meanwhile, this one I started over a month ago and I've been slowly picking at them, but these are now starting to germinate at the exact same rate, which is interesting to know. And then the really cool thing is some of these have also started to germinate, and I only started these a couple days ago. Yeah, 3 days ago. So these ones, I got more seeds from Baker Creek because I thought that, you know, all the ones that I had were just goners. I thought that nothing was going to come of them. They were basically like the end of their last leg. And so I thought I wasn't going to have enough peppers. I really wanted to be able to have 3 full trays of peppers this year. So with the 2-inch pots that I use, that's 32 peppers in a tray. So I wanted 3 of those. Now remember, I've only ever had 1 before, and so that was my stretch goal. You can see my setup behind me, and I'll talk about this in a second too, but that's what I really wanted, and I was just really disappointed that I didn't think I was going to get it. And so I started these other 3 varieties, which were Sweet Bonnet, Ajvarsky, I think is how you say that, and Habanado. So these are all sweet peppers. And the cool thing is so I started these on the 10th. Today is the 13th. And if I can come in here without making a mess. See, this is the hard part for me, is separating this gently. But I don't know if you can see in there. Maybe not. I'll try and zoom in. But they're actually pepper sprouted in there. With this, there were a couple things that I changed. And so I wanted to kind of document what I did differently in the last couple days, things that I've changed. 1, so that I remember them next year, since this is a record for me, but 2, in case this helps anyone else who has been struggling to grow peppers like I have. So the first thing that I changed, which is kind of a small thing actually, but what I was doing is I was just kind of holding all of these pots in this, you know, this like little plastic tray that I have here, and I put them directly on top of the heat mat, and then I covered them with towels. I had a couple, it was really slow, nothing really germinated honestly for the first like 2 weeks, and then by the 3rd week I started to get a few things, and it's been just kind of trickling in before today. So I was holding them all like this, and I had them on the heat mat directly like this. And I will note also that my house we usually don't run the heater overnight, but because I had all these baby plants inside, especially the peppers, we've kept the heater on. And so we have kept the temperature in the house at about 68 degrees all day and all night. And so that was kind of like the control that I had first. Oh, and then I also had this entire setup was on a timer. And so what I did at first, this whole setup was on 12 hours. And so that the heat mat that's up here that these were sitting on before these seedlings were all up, that was on a 12-hour timer, and then it would cut off during the day, just like all the lights. Now, what I've changed in the last couple days, one, I changed the time that all my lights are on. Those have gone from 12 hours to 16 hours. And the reason I did that is because a lot of my seedlings were just super leggy. And so I did some research. I was trying to lower the lights, get them as close as possible, and nothing seemed to be really helping. And that is something that I struggle with. I have 2 sets of lights and I haven't really figured out either one. So I changed the time on that. The other thing that I did is for that heat mat, I changed it from a timer to just being constantly on. And so now those are getting about 10 degrees warmer all day and all night. So that was a huge thing that I changed. And when I made those changes, so now not only is the heat mat on longer, whatever residual heat would be coming off these lights is also just like in the air around these seedlings. And that was when I saw the first wave of germination where stuff started to pick up a little bit, which was really exciting. So what I changed after that, in the last couple days, what I've done differently is, first of all, I had stuff coming up. And so these are mostly peppers. I think this is actually all peppers. So since I had stuff that was starting to germinate, I needed to kind of like share the heat mat. And so this tray didn't fit on the heat mat with this tray. And so what I did is I kind of had them half and half because, you know, I've been doing these as I go. So this whole tray wasn't full yet. I just put these on a plate instead. So I had the heat mat, it was halfway on the heat mat, had the plate, a towel, and then I stacked all these just on top of each other and then covered them with a couple more towels just to make sure that it was dark. And it's only been like that for really the last 3 days since I started the Ziploc bags. And I think that was it. So I think maybe with this, maybe they were too close to the heat. I'm not sure. But I just know that as soon as I switched them to a plate, and then they were, you know, kind of on the heat mat, but only really just a little bit, they started to do way better. This is really exciting for me. I have a ton of peppers. I have to now transfer or start all of these because as soon as any seed, as soon as it starts to germinate, you want to get off the paper towel and into soil, because what happens is the root will start to grow into the paper towel, and like I said before, it's really hard to take them out if you miss them. And so that's why I check these every day. It's more tedious, but it's a system that works for me because I really want the peppers. That is one thing that I've been doing. Let's see, what was I talking about? What was I talking about? Oh, where I'm at now. Now, because I have so many that I started, now I have a problem on my hands, which is a really awesome problem to have, but it's still something I have to figure out. Now, the issue that I have is I don't have enough space. There's a couple factors that go into this. One, I can fit 4. I can fit 4 trays on this shelf, and this one, as soon as stuff starts actually popping out of the soil, it's going to need light, and there's no light up here, so that one has to go down. So I have space for 4 trays inside here in the house. I have a whole other bigger seed starting setup in our garage, but one, it's pretty cold in our garage still at night, and so I could heat them, but I have to use the mats that you put the temperature up a lot higher, and they basically are temperature controlled. And I've done that in the past, and I wanted to just keep as many peppers in the house as I could, because all of my peppers have just struggled, and I think that's one of the reasons why they've stunted and all of that kind of stuff and just grown really slow, because in the past I grew everything in the garage and then had them on heat mats. So that's one issue, is I do have more space, but it's in the garage where it's too cold. Now, the setup that I have out there is a huge rack. So it's 4 feet wide. It's, I think, 7 feet tall. And so it's huge and doesn't fit in the house. Or we would be living around it in our house very uncomfortably. And the lights are big, they're very bright, all that kind of stuff. And even with this one, you can see I have this towel here. I actually drape that down when all these lights are on, just so that there's not so much light coming into the rest of the house. But anyway, so those are some issues that I have. It's space. And then the other issue I have is for these black bottom watering trays, these 10-20 trays, I have 9 of these total. And so you can see here, I'm already using a fair number of them. And so I have 4 other ones that aren't on this tray right now that I can use. All of the things that are on here, so I have like tomatoes, I have different flowers, I have herbs, things like basil, stuff like that. All of those are gonna have to now go into the garage to make space for these peppers. But even then, I only have a certain amount of trays, and these are my pots. So these are 2-inch pots. I love these pots. I got them from Bootstrap Farmer. But because of my space issues, I don't have any more of the smaller ones. And so I'm gonna have to use these, and then I'm gonna have to use the trays that I have, which means instead of being able to fit like 72 cells in a 10-20 tray, which is again the black tray that I just showed you, instead of fitting 72 plants, I can fit 32 with these. I've been thinking about this this morning. Since I saw just how many of these are germinated, it's pretty crazy. I think what I'm gonna do for these is I think I'm gonna plant 2 peppers in each one. That way it's kind of insurance on space. I'll be able to get twice as many in one tray. If for whatever reason one of the germinated seeds doesn't pop up, it's not a waste of one of these big pots, it's just a waste of half of it, which is totally fine. And then the other reason why I'm thinking about this is my biggest thing right now is the space I have versus the time I need to actually have these things inside. And I think that the peppers will be okay kind of like being roommates and kind of bunking together for a while, because our last frost date is next week. And I don't put peppers out close to our last frost date at all. I was actually just gonna wait a whole other month. And so that's why I started some of these in January, but I'm still trying to get more because I just didn't have enough. But I still have time to get more of these plants, at least small. And so I'm thinking what I might be able to do, fingers crossed, is as I get more space, so as I'm able to plant out some of these other things that can go out closer to our last frost date, and clearing out those pots to be able to then separate the peppers, and so they have more breathing room on their own. It's complicated, it's convoluted, it's not at all ideal, but I think that's what I'm going to do this year. I think that's how I'm going to finagle this and make this space issue work. I'll keep you updated. I'll let you know when I pot all of these, because I'm probably going to have to do this in multiple sittings. There's so many of them. I'll keep you updated on how many trays or how many plants I end up having at the end of this. And then we'll kind of like watch the progress as they grow and all of that kind of stuff. So I will keep you updated on all of this. Wish me luck. This was one of those really amazing problems to have. I've never had the problem of too many peppers germinating before. It's always been too few. So this is super exciting. Anyway, I hope that this was helpful for you. I hope just seeing what I'm trying is helpful for you and giving you ideas on what you might want to do for yourself. Again, I watched other YouTube videos to learn how to do these things, like the Ziploc bag thing, and then I modified it to something I liked for me. And so I hope that this kind of gives you ideas on what you could do to modify things that work for you, or just something like, you know, straight out try out the Ziploc bag thing and see how that goes first. The other thing too that I really wanted to talk about, and was really the reason why I turned on the camera for this, because I was just gonna, you know, go to town and put these together, is I really wanted to share this in case it encourages someone else, that even though I've had a really hard time germinating and growing peppers from seeds every single year, I've always gotten some. One, I hope that that's encouraging to you, that even if it's not exactly what you want, and even if they don't look great, even if they look really terrible, like I've put really terrible yellowing, leaves falling off plants into the ground, into my garden, and still gotten food off of them. I hope that that's encouraging to you too, to just try it anyway, even if they look really bad. Give it a go and keep trying things, like, because this is something that I've been so discouraged by, the idea that, you know, we had this bigger garden this year and I wasn't going to be able to grow enough peppers that we, like, not even as many as we had the previous years. That was so discouraging to me that I wanted to give up multiple times, but I kept trying. And so I hope that this is beneficial for you too, to just keep trying. You still have time, it's okay. And if it doesn't work this year, there's always next year. Don't give up. You can totally do this. If I can do this, you can do this. If I can do this, anybody can do this. But the thing I really want to share is that just because it's hard, even if you don't understand it and you're confused, that doesn't mean that it's impossible and you can't do it, right? And you're gonna have some sort of success, whether that is, you know, the actual way you wanted it to work out, or a lesson that you learned that you can use to make it better for next time. So I hope this is helpful. I hope this is encouraging. If you are growing peppers, I would love to know your tips. Leave them in the comments below. Like, what's really worked for you? What's your go-to system? You know, some people, they don't do all this for their peppers. They just put them in soil like everything else, and it works great. And so I'd love to know kind of like what works for you. Where are you at? And how are you doing this? And if you've never tried peppers before, if you've never tried growing these, or, you know, anything else from seeds, I do really encourage you to try it, because it's the only way you're gonna know. And every time you do it, you're gonna get better. Anyway, I'm really excited about this, and we'll see how many pepper plants we end up with this year. I'm pumped. Thank you so much for watching this, and I'll check you on the next one.